Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. So she's live in studio. Darcy Schoening, she's running for Colorado GOP Chairwoman. And it's a battle between her and Britta Horn. Now Richard Holtorf's in there. I think Lori Sain's in as well. Now I'm not endorsing in this. I just decided after years of being in Republican politics, everybody's my friend. They all get an opportunity to come on the show and engage in these issues. Darcy, I want to talk first about Kyle Clark and the conversation you had, because I watched it yesterday, all 25 minutes, and it's one of the best moments I've seen of Republicans engaged with Kyle Clark ever. It was impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And he's interviewed a lot of people. And here's what I liked about it. Okay, so first, I think he totally underestimated you.
For sure. Right?
And I was talking to my wife. It reminds me, and this is one of our favorite movies, but Legally Blonde, where everybody in the movie underestimates Reese Witherspoon, and she comes roaring through in the court case at the end, right? And I think you showed poise. You didn't break. You didn't back down. You were articulate and quick. And most importantly, from my perspective, what I liked is you didn't back down from your positions. He kept trying to guilt you into backing down, like on trans issues, and you just, no, this is what I believe. You really want to shut down government-run schools? Yeah, I do. Aurora's a third world hellhole? Yeah. I mean, they have Venezuelan gangs. But he kept trying to guilt you like he does most Republicans into backing down. And a lot of Republicans I see that go on that program try to moderate. They're like, oh, well, Kyle, I don't really believe that. It was just, but you were just like, yeah, that's who I am. That's what I believe. I thought you were a good articulate of conservative principles.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Were you nervous?
No, not at all.
Why not? I mean, he's ended some Republicans' careers.
He's not going to end mine. I mean, as Ryan Sheeling said on the air the other day, I'm extremely principled, and, I know who I am. I stand in my values. And if you know who you are and you know what you stand for, then there's nobody that can take you down like that, Kyle Clark included. Yeah. And he didn't.
Yeah, it's worth watching. I think Republicans should go watch how you handled Kyle Clark. It's 25 minutes. It's a good conversation. So remind me again when this vote is taking place.
It's March 29th.
March 29th. So we're just a few weeks away from this. Give me the lay of the ground. Like I mentioned, there's a number of other great people in this. Richard Holtorf, Britta Horn, Lori Sain. You're out there talking to people. What are you hearing?
Well, as you know, there's, kind of a divide in the party right now. So there's two camps of voters, primarily. So there's what's known as the Britta side, and then it sounds like there's what's known as the Darcy side, and those are the two sides that are kind of emerging as of right now.
You don't see Richard Holtorf and Danielle Neuschwanger, who were on our show Monday, by the way, rising up?
No.
Too late, you think?
It's not just that it's too late. Listen, I love Richard Holtorf. He's a honest guy. He's funny. He's fun to be around. I mean, I'd love to have a beer with him and some pizza. But he's not going to lead our state, and especially not with Danielle Neuschwanger on the ticket. Listen, I like Danielle. We've always gotten along. I saw her last night. I gave her a hug, but she re-registered with the party on January 6th. The governor's race situation last cycle was a mess with her involvement. There's just no way. And he's not going to get support from most Republicans with that type of ticket. And then with a history of, he, on the House floor, said that he paid for his girlfriend's abortion. He was in a debate in Evergreen where he pulled a gun out when he was talking about Second Amendment rights. Like I said, I love the guy, love you, Richard, but he's not the next chair of the Colorado GOP.
I think Bill brought up a really important question with Danielle Neuschwanger as well, was, okay, we understand that you went away from the party and now you've come back. That happens to some people. Right. Okay. Where were you in November? And do you think that that's an appropriate thing for someone that's now seeking leadership, right? Like maybe if you've did that 5 or 6 years ago and you've spent 5 or 6 years working in local party infrastructure out there registering people to vote, doing fundraising, that type of thing. Okay, I can see that, but specifically, what were you doing in November to help Republicans?
I would go a step further, because if we remember, Danielle was running through the primary to be the nominee for governor and had pledged to support the eventual nominee. Then, when she wasn't the nominee, not only did not support the nominee that was chosen by the party, left the party and ran against the choice. Yeah. That, to me, is a level more than just leaving the party and coming back like the prodigal son. This is different. This is actively campaigning to defeat a Republican, and that's something that, again, I'm not a member of either party, but for me, I look at that and go, wait a minute here. I have a lack of faith that this person is coming to the table genuinely wearing the jersey. I want to know why you're not a bandwagoner at this point, but that's personal.
I mean, I totally agree. It's not just a matter of leaving the party. It's like you said, where were you in November? I mean, where were you in Durango with the schools? Where were you anytime anything has gone on? Name one door that you've knocked on. Name one ballot that you've cured. And that's the thing. I mean, you can't just talk the talk. You have to walk the walk. You have to put in the work. And to be the next chair of the Colorado GOP, as I continue to say, we need doers. We can't just have people that pick up a microphone and say, here's what I want to do. I want to get Republicans elected. I want to fundraise. I want to flip the state, and I want unity. Those are the four things you hear. Okay, how are you going to do it, number one, and show me some ounce of proof that you know how to do it and that you've demonstrated that you're willing to do this work and that you do it year after year. And Danielle has not done that, nor have any of the other candidates in this race for Colorado GOP chair.
We're talking with Darcy Schoening. She's running for Colorado chairwoman of the Colorado Republican Party. All right, so let's talk unity. Last time we were together, Britta was sitting right next to me when she was served a lawsuit from you. Mm-hmm. Why not, in the name of unity, drop the lawsuits, move forward? Is it really important to drive these lawsuits forward against people like Britta Horn?
Okay, so yes, the lawsuits need to stop. And to that end, that's part of my long game strategy here. How do we as a party continue to exist and fundraise and do all the things we're supposed to do when internally we don't trust our own bylaws, we don't work internally to triage disputes, and we instead go to external court systems and judges and bankrupt the party? I helped raise those funds that Eli Bremer, Britta Horn, Todd Watkins, and Christy Burton Brown depleted from the party coffers. So I led the candidate initiative in 2024 to help candidates strategize, get them accurate data, help get them volunteers and resources. And there were several critical candidates that I believed, based upon the money that we had before that lawsuit, I believed we would have money for them. I then had to go to those candidates and say, I'm sorry, Rebecca. I'm sorry, Stan. I'm sorry, Scott. We don't have money because it's tied up in that lawsuit. And that's not fair. Not only does that decrease candidate confidence and it weakens our ability to recruit good candidates, which I'm actively working on already right now, but it also decreases donor confidence. Those donors, I can promise you, did not give over $100,000 to be robbed of it by an internal party dispute. So the people who did that, which the judge found that they were in the wrong, those seats belong to the current leadership. So the people who spent that money trying to take those seats, it has to be put back. And if people are going to do that in the future, which I hope, it's my hope we create bylaws to prevent that. But if that happens in the future, same thing. You got to pay that back. We can't be a party operating like that.
So the lawsuit against Britta, against Eli and others is an effort to recoup lost revenue.
Yes.
Or lost donations that came in as a result of their legal challenges, and to send a message to anybody else that if you try to go through that similar process, you're gonna end up having to pay.
Yeah, you have to pay for it. We can't just waste donor dollars. Donor dollars are for two things: getting candidates elected and keeping the lights on. It's not for internal party disputes. That has to stop.
Interesting. Talking to Darcy Schoening, candidate for Colorado Republican Party chairwoman. All right, Britta's going to be on Kyle Clark tonight. Lori Sain, I haven't heard much from. Is she getting out there?
Not really. So I know that she was supposed to be at the Arapahoe Tea Party last night, but the connection was bad. She was not at her own county's meeting on Saturday in Weld County. It was up there. She's not there. So I don't know what the strategy is there.
And you've now been on the show multiple times. You're going out there. You've got an entire infrastructure. You got people helping you.
Yeah.
You're building a pretty strong effort to try to win this over. And as you mentioned, it seems to be coming down between you and Britta Horn. If Britta wins, would that lawsuit go away?
I would assume that if Britta Horn were the new GOP chair, that yes, she would squash that lawsuit. But, that's an interesting question because legally speaking, I would think that the prior party officers could keep that going in some personal capacity if they decided to.
Has she been sued in her personal capacity?
She has.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we'll have to ask her about that as well because that happened while we were at the IHOP last time. Britta being served right there in front of us. All right. Let's talk about unity then and how you build it forward. Obviously, with those folks, you feel it's necessary to bring about a lawsuit to rectify a wrong and to send a message moving forward. Okay. I'm probably the only person in America that worked for Mitt Romney and has spoken at Biker for Trump rallies. Okay. I'm just kind of the enemy is the left. We need to focus on the left. That's where our energy needs to be. And I'm happy to have anybody on the bus that moves forward.
Yeah.
Now, with that, I try to balance out our principles with people that may not clearly share all of our principles, right? So, for instance, log cabin Republicans. Mm-hmm. I believe it's important for Republicans to maintain a commitment to traditional marriage. Log cabins don't.
Right.
But they're willing to help us take on Democrats. So, okay, we get on the bus so long as we don't lose our principles as Republicans, right? And you have to balance that out. How do you build a Republican Party where the old guard, right, the what some people would claim rhinos, or feel like they can contribute and advance and move forward, but at the same time, I like a Republican Party that's more tapped into blue collar, grassroots, MAGA. I mean, we're getting stuff done with Trump that Bush and Reagan never could, like closing the Department of Education, right? So there's something to appreciate about the MAGA side. But at the same time, I want a bigger Republican Party that includes some of the old guard, maybe some former Mitt Romney supporters, right? How do you do that? Or do we need to do that?
Well, I mean, obviously we never want to water down our principles, as I continue to say. So to draw in those or to keep those people, that's a two-sided argument, right? Some people say, well, listen, if they don't want to be a part of the party, if they don't want to be a part of this party under President Trump, who's, like you just said, doing more than anybody ever could or anybody would have ever imagined, then are those people truly Republicans? What do they want here? And so if we don't stand by President Trump and we don't say, okay, listen, this aggression, this way of getting things done, it's working. Yeah. And I have heard that. One of my friends who lives in the Springs, and I would say she's a really moderate Republican. We talked yesterday and she said, he wasn't my choice. Nikki Haley was my choice. But look at what he's doing. And she's like, how is he getting all of this done? But then she did still say, now he is still out there saying crazy stuff. And, can you make President Trump stop saying crazy stuff? No. But like I said on Kyle Clark, I, as the Colorado GOP chair, I can have a comms team that says, okay, let's temper this down a little. You're a passionate individual. Let's kind of hone this message. And so that's the best we can do. And, we can't force people to be part of our party.
Well, and I think there's a responsibility on that side, too, to recognize what's happened. So, look, I came from that world. I worked for Ryan Call in the state party. I remember after 2012, we did all of these little meetings about how we were too country club-ish and we need to go out there and appeal to grassroots and change kind of how people look at the Republican Party. So they did that. Like, they went out and did it. And then Trump delivered on that in a way that those guys could have never imagined. But I've always found it interesting that they're very smart. They're very smart people who seem to be hung up on Donald Trump and a more blue-collar Republican Party, and for whatever reason are now using their energy to bash a current Republican Party. Right. Like Dick Watt, 90% of Dick Wadham's articles in the Gazette are how terrible the Republican Party is.
I know.
And what I find ironic on that is when I was working for Ryan Call, it was RMGO and Dudley Brown and they're creating division and they're not allowing Republicans to go out there and fight Democrats. Okay, now things have switched and grassroots blue collar has control, and the guys are following the same playbook of spending a lot of time bashing the operations of the Republican Party as opposed to going out there and helping them win.
Right.
And I just find it like, okay, there's responsibility on that side as well.
There's responsibility on all sides.
Yeah.
And that's what I continue to tell everybody. Like you said, you've worked for the state GOP. It's, my good friend Garrett Flicker, who's the vice president of Log Cabin Republicans, we have this conversation all the time. It's like things just go back and forth, back and forth. In 2022, during the U.S. Senate race, I orchestrated a Senate forum in Monument. And I asked Valdemar Archuleta, who was the chair of Log Cabin at the time, to help me moderate it. And Valdemar, he wasn't all over the place back then like he is now, right? So he shows up in his big sequin MAGA hat and some kind of American flag jacket and rainbow shirt. And I kid you not, I almost got thrown out of 2 or 3 boards that I served on with the quote-unquote old guard that you just mentioned, right? Why? Because they don't think like us, because that group doesn't think like us at all. And how could I have a gay guy on stage? And now you kind of see a switch where like everybody's working with Log Cabin. And I use Log Cabin as an example. I think Colorado is ready. They're ready for a leader that says, look, guys, here are our goals. Here's what I'm doing right now as your chair to achieve those. And here's what I need you to do. Even Joe Oltmann, he posted on social media this morning. He's coming out with his endorsement of me. Joe Oltmann asked me, how can we unify? If that guy's asking, hey, like, how can both sides of the party come together? We're ready. And I think that we are going to really come together in this next cycle. We're
talking with Darcy Schoening. She's a candidate for chairwoman of the Colorado Republican Party. When we come back, I want to ask you specifically about those goals, because I think unifying, the easiest way to unify is to win. So Republicans start winning, you'll start to see unification around winners. I want to ask you about how you plan to win and more. You don't want to miss this conversation. Darcy Schoening, chairwoman of the Colorado Republican Party. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
She's running for chairwoman of the Colorado Republican Party. A lot of questions coming in via text message. We'll ask some of that. You and I were talking in an effort to seek unity. You mentioned that if Britta Horn, Eli Bremer, and others showed up to negotiate a settled deal on what happened last year, you'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, because like I said on previous shows, it's not about a personal vendetta. It's just about making the party whole in some type of way where we can restore confidence and have confidence moving forward that lawsuits are not going to be the way of the Colorado GOP. So if I plan to call them in the coming weeks, but listen, if Eli said, hey, I want to come in and mail out thank you cards and help fundraise or, hold an event at my house to help raise money for the Colorado GOP, great. Great. Just show us that you want to move forward and you want to help restore those funds and you weren't just doing it for personal gain.
What outreach did you engage in before filing the lawsuit? How did your outreach to them beforehand to talk about it?
Well, there wasn't any. That's not...
Why?
It's not incumbent upon me. I mean, the officers are the ones that initiated the lawsuit, so I don't have any authority over that until I'm chair.
I know, but didn't you raise your hand when the conversations were going on? I mean, you held the lawsuit and you handed it in front of Britta. There weren't any conversations. We didn't reach out. There was no outreach that you know of. And so you don't have no idea whether or not they outreached them or not.
I honestly wasn't part of those conversations.
That's shocking. That's shocking that you wouldn't. That no one would. That it's from what the information that we have here on the table is that no one from the state party would reach out first. That lawsuit was the first choice. I just find that interesting. Okay, that's fair. Interesting choice.
Darcy, another question coming in text message is you were concerned about donor dollars being used to fight this lawsuit instead of helping candidates. Were the donor dollars coming in for the Republican Party under Dave Williams' leadership purely used for the Republican Party, or were they being utilized for his primary race?
So, that's a really good question. People ask that all over the place, and no matter what you put in front of them, they kind of don't want to accept it. I can categorically say 100% and put my life savings on it. He did not take money for his own primary race. I've seen the statements. I saw how the transactions were made. The same mechanism that Dave Williams used for his race with the bulk mail account was used by 3 other candidates, which nobody's talking about. That money was not only paid back, but a larger donation was given by the chair back to the party. Totally legal mechanism. In fact, it was dismissed. So what are we talking about here? If the courts dismissed it and nobody can find any proof on paper that happened because it was a legal mechanism, it's just a moot point now. He didn't do that.
All right, Darcy Schoening, she's a candidate to become chairwoman of the Colorado Republican Party, joining us. Let's talk specifics on what the Republican Party could look like in 2026, 2027. What do you plan to deliver for Republicans in Colorado?
Sure. So, as some of you may know, I've been building our Build Our Benches initiative. So I have a candidate recruitment tool on my website right now to recruit good candidates early. I've been having tons of conversations with school board candidates across the state, talked to a lot of people just in the last couple of weeks about where they've got vacancies coming up. And my team is building a comprehensive database of all the vacancies for the school board elections in 2025 and local elections. And then for 2026, all of the elections. And then we're filling in those spots. We're talking to candidates, right? Like a GOP should be doing. But we haven't seen chairs do this ever. So we're putting together a system by which we're giving the donors confidence that their money is going to go somewhere. We're going to flip school board seats and hold on to school board seats in 2025. Take that momentum, that confidence that we've built with the donors, the volunteers, the activists, the candidates, and then in 2026, we're going to take back even more seats in the Senate, the House, and we're going to have such a robust system and on-point data that we're going to work really hard to reclaim the governor's office and some state seats.
What I appreciate about that, and I said this to Dave because we're friends when he first got elected, is win locally. I think the electorate is so – look, they're putting into office Phil Weiser and Jenna Griswold, right? So there's an intelligence problem with our electorate right now when they're looking at Jenna Griswold and going, that's who I want in statewide leadership. So I said to Dave – go win locally, and then it seemed like the pivot was more towards these congressional seats and his own primary and stuff like that. So I appreciate what you're doing because a great example of somebody that taking a very basic step and getting a city council seat and then launching to international prominence is Danielle Jurinsky,
right?
From a city council seat. You don't have to win statewide in order to have a huge impact. You can do so from a local race. Why is it so important for local, like someone like yourself, a mom, who's, and in Danielle's case, a business owner as well, that just got frustrated with the way things are going and decided, I'm going to step up and actually try to change things. Why is it important for someone locally to seek an office?
It is so important. Listen, Danielle Jurinsky and your local school board, they have more effect on your children's lives and on your family's life than Jared Polis does. Or than Donald Trump does, sorry to say, but they do. So here's the thing. When we talk about local candidates getting elected, we're building our benches, so we're building strong conservatives who may potentially run for future offices. But it's so much bigger than that, right? Because let's take one bill as an example. Let's take House Bill 1039, non-legal name changes. That was Stephanie Vihill's atrocious pronoun bill. Okay, so Christy Davis, the chair of Moms for Liberty, and I, we went around the state and we said, look, there's a loophole in this bill. So you can ask for parental consent for a child to go by another name or pronoun other than the one which he was given at birth. So we were able to target conservative boards with good conservatives. But guess what? By and large, most of the boards across the state that had a conservative majority or were all conservatives, even they didn't want to pass this policy to protect their students. So we were grateful for the school districts that did, and we were able to isolate school districts across the state to protect those kids. Well, think about what a huge difference those school board members make to those families. That's a huge deal. And stuff like that comes up every couple weeks in our schools, our cities, and our counties. So we're not just talking about future leaders. We're also talking about what they can do to protect you from the legislature and Jared Polis.
Talking with Darcy Schoening. She's running for chairwoman of the Colorado Republican Party. Let's talk about one of the more controversial aspects of Dave Williams' leadership, which was endorsing in primaries. That hadn't happened previously under Republican Party leadership. Is that going to end under your leadership?
Yes. I've put out an amendment, the Darcy Amendment. It is primary neutrality. So that was definitely a policy that backfired. It didn't go well. I did lead the historic endorsement of President Trump. As you know, I think it was important to do so. Everybody knows why by now. But that said, endorsing down ballot, it did more harm than good. And we know that now. So as leaders, it's okay to say, look, we tried this. We perhaps executed it not as well as we could have, but also it didn't bring us together. It didn't help the candidates, let's be honest. So we as a party, as I told Kyle Clark, we as a party, what we need to do is put out accurate information about the candidates, show the voters how to get to that information, and trust that they'll make the best decisions so that we're not dividing people.
Billy and I discussed this, and to me, the survey wasn't a big problem. I didn't like the one question about AFP, right? I thought that was clearly a personal question from Dave, and I appreciate all the great work that AFP does. And I didn't mind knowing where candidates stood on issues. I thought that was kind of helpful. Oh, what do you think about the sanctity life? Are you really pro-life? Because a lot of the times, if you're sitting there looking at primary candidates, you're like digging through a website to try to figure this stuff out. That didn't bother me. I just didn't like the state party using its name and its resources to support particular candidates. And then, obviously, the AFP question I didn't like either. But I want to ask you about, in addition to that, I just lost my train of thought, Bill, on the question I was going to ask. Do you have a question?
That's not good. Yeah, I want to go further. I want to go further into the idea of with the primary neutrality. What lessons do you feel you learned personally on leadership based on what happened with the primary questionnaire, and then also with Dave Williams and the party endorsing candidates in the primary that in recent memory hadn't happened?
Well, I mean, like I just mentioned, I think that as it didn't play out well, right? We learned that, and that's an argument, and it's a hard pill to swallow that I've had to take out into the public, because there is a portion of the party bill that is a little bit splintered off, and they're saying, well, we don't get the best candidates if we don't endorse. And by and large, that's just not true. We can get good candidates by recruiting good candidates and by helping good candidates and by putting the information out there to the voters without causing a massive schism in the party. But I think the most important lesson there is not about neutrality. It's not about any of the bylaws. It's that, again, sometimes as leaders, we may make a decision that we have to go back on. I hope that it doesn't happen often. All of us as leaders do. but it happens. And that is how I look at endorsing in the primaries. We got to go back.
Okay, let me follow up on that just for a second. And going a little bit wider, what I'm looking at, I'm going to ask you, you've been part of Dave Williams' administration in the Colorado GOP. Can you outline for our listeners what tactics, what steps you are going to take specifically that are different than Dave, or is it going to be a continuation of business as usual? Where I'm kind of going with this in a back end is, where do you think that Dave Williams made some missteps possibly you need to correct?
And can I get her to answer this after the break? We're up against a break here.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to get you to answer that question. And it was the right question that I was struggling with earlier to remember. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, where we're not paying attention to the clock. This is News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Darcy Schoening's joining us. We've got about another minute and a half, and then she said she could stay over a little bit into the 9 o'clock hour because I want to talk on-the-ground logistics, right? What Scott Pressler did in Pennsylvania, day after day, registering people to vote, winning. I feel like that voter registration effort's been lost recently. Tell us how you plan to do that as chairwoman.
Sure. So this is all outlined on my website as well. Hispanic outreach, young voter outreach, Black outreach, LGBT outreach, right? So parades, churches. One of the big things that the Democrats are doing that we're not doing is going into high schools and talking to the 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And we're seeing that this generation of high school kids, right, they are tired of what's going on. They're like thirsty for normalcy and for God and family.
I love that. All right, we'll continue the conversation with Darcy Schoening. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
68.
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and Honda stakes from the right, left, and center. Joining us in studio, Darcy Schoening. She's running for chairwoman of the Colorado Republican Party. We had a breaking update come in from Brandy Bradley at the top of your interview, so I want to make sure we reserve enough time for you so you get the entire hour. Bill's point, where he asked what you're going to do differently than Dave Williams and, specifics that you're going to bring in. Let's go there.
Well, I mean, everything I've said during this hour and on every show and should tell you we're just not the same person. So it's easier to tell you how Dave and I are alike, which is in our values. But as far as how we execute things and how we manage the GOP, we're just totally different people. Like I said, I led the candidate initiative for the Colorado GOP last cycle because I saw a need for it. I was out curing ballots in Weld County, and people will tell you I am the only officer that they saw doing that. I'm boots on the ground, hardworking every single day. I was out in Durango a couple weeks ago fighting for our kids. So that's not a criticism of Dave. Dave is, focused on closing the primaries, which I also want to continue, but I'm just heavily focused on the work that it takes to flip the seats and raise the money to do so right now.
Let's talk fundraising. How much have you raised in your role, and what are your budget goals? What do you anticipate hitting fundraising-wise moving forward?
In my role, it's hard to say how much I've raised because I run Capital Club. So that's a lot of money that comes in every month or two. That's something that I've been running for over a year. And then I hold various fundraisers. I send emails out. So I've raised probably, over six figures. I would say double that for the Colorado GOP so far. And I've raised just as much in my Build Our Benches initiative. I want to have $2 million in the bank for school board elections. And when we go into 2026 with that confidence and that momentum, I want to have $3 to $4 million in the bank for state candidates.
Okay. So that would be A total goal of about $6 million, $5 to $6 million.
Yeah.
And what was Dave raising? Do you know?
I want to say it was about 2 to 3. Don't quote me on that though. But Dave has raised money to his credit. There's been a couple million that have come in under his tenure. So.
Okay. And do you think the donors are going to come back? I mean, and willing to engage at that level that you're hoping to get at? Do you feel like they left under Dave, or were they there?
No, I mean, I think donors in general have left. There's been some that have left, but listen, there's a lot that haven't left. I mean, as somebody that sees the donations coming in, sees the mail, sees the emails from the Anodot, there's new donors every day, and there's still a lot of large donors. So we're holding on to those people, but then there are some people that have left. I've met with some of them. I'm not going to name people by their names, but several huge donors have reached out to me, and they've said, look, I don't want to put my money into the Colorado GOP, but with you as chair, I will. And I know that they will, because they've donated to my run as chair. I'm grateful for that I've got donors behind me even in this race. And if that doesn't show confidence, then I don't know what does.
Now, I want to follow up on that just for a second, Darcy. This is a personal thing. I'm not saying personal issue but I think that personally, when I see the lay of the land, one of the hurdles you're going to have to overcome is the same hurdle that Kamala had coming out of the Biden administration, talking about change and growth while being a part of the previous administration. That is a more difficult road to hoe based on just messaging. So what I want to ask you is, again, just laying the land as far as why I'm asking the question, is what do you think are the growth opportunities? What do you think are the places where the GOP can make inroads inside of Colorado that Dave Williams did not see, or maybe in someone else's interpretation, ignored? What are you going to be able to do that he didn't?
Well, like I said, I mean, all the things I've been doing. I led the historic endorsement of President Trump, as I mentioned several times. I led the candidate initiative for the Colorado GOP. I lead all the local policy writing, the directives that go out to the county commissions.
Let me interrupt just for that, though. But part of that was under Dave's purview.
I created that. Yeah, it wasn't under Dave's purview. I created that position, and I forged it out of the hard work that I'm already doing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, but it was while under Dave's leadership, etc. And part of the issue with Dave was, when he was coming in, it was we were moving KBB out, Christy Burton Brown, because we needed to give the party back to the grassroots. So what I'm trying to figure out is this line of delineation. Are we still continuing with the grassroots and we're continuing with the mechanisms in the previous administration, or is this a new, different administration? That's why I brought up the issue about Kamala Harris. It was a very difficult thing that she had to walk, and I think she failed at it. I'm not prejudging where you are in it, but I want to know, because those were things that you created, but it was under previous administration. So how is this different? Where are we going new? Is new needed, or is previous good?
Well, some of the previous work needs to be carried over. I mean, those things that I created, that office that was forged for me because of the work that I had been doing that really didn't fit into any particular role at the time, that work needs to continue. But guess what? So a lot of that work is what, in my mind, the chair needs to be doing. So I'm carrying that hard work and that boots on the ground mentality into the office of the chairman. And, you know, to that end, to compare Dave to Joe Biden, Joe Biden was a disastrous failure, and the last set of elections proved that. We can't attach.
I'm just doing it based on separation.
No, I get it, but we can't.
It's hard to get out of it's hard to sell the new and different direction when you're coming from the existing administration, regardless of that administration. Al Gore had the same thing under Clinton, and Bush had the same thing coming out of Reagan.
But my point is, I don't have to sell it as hard, because Dave wasn't a disaster like Joe Biden. He may do some things that you didn't agree with and some of us didn't agree with, and I may have a totally different management style than him, and I want a totally different Colorado GOP than Dave wanted. But to say that I have to 100% separate myself from Dave is just, I mean, that's more so rhetoric than anything else. I mean, the grassroots, by and large, their vote is the majority in the party right now. Their voices remain at the top of the list. But to say everybody's welcome in our party, everybody's welcome in the Colorado GOP.
Talking with Darcy Schoening, she's running for chairwoman of the Colorado Republican Party. We have text messages here of people that want to donate to you.
Oh,
so where
great.
can they?
They can go to darcyforchair.com. Thank you guys so much. That means a lot to me. Darcy, D-A-R-C-Y, for F-O-R, chair. So darcyforchair.com. Thank you.
You can also follow her on X at Darcy4CO. And I encourage everybody, go watch the discussion she had with Kyle Clark. It's where we started this conversation. I think you had the best response to Kyle Clark I've seen from a Republican in a long time, because you were so comfortable in your positions. You weren't willing to back down. I think he underestimated you. He was caught a little off guard on your ability to articulate and defend your position so well, and it was fun to watch. So,
thank you. I had fun
job.
doing it. I love it.
We always like it when Kyle Clark gets a little heat. So well done, Darcy. Darcy Schoening joining us. Again, one more time, your website.
Darcyforchair.com. Darcy is spelled with D-A-R-C-Y, and F-O-R is spelled out. Darcyforchair.com.
There you go. Thanks so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill show
thanks
today.
for your time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. I now want to